A lovely good morning. It is yet another interesting Tuesday morning where we look at community aspects on the breakfast show and matters happening in our country. We are broadcasting to you live in Lusaka, Zambia's capital city, from IBEX. I'm not alone in the studio, myself, Patrick Soko. I'm with my usual co-host, Miriam Kaemba. It's good to be back on the screen.
It's good to be back on the screen and share the set with you, Soko. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How is it going?
You disappeared yesterday.
I disappeared, then I reappeared.
And
yeah, so
you disappeared yesterday, and we did see, some of our viewers who always notice that I always share the set with you, having different questions like, why is Soko today? But anyway, I wasn't alone yesterday. I shared this the set with Nelson. It was quite an interesting set, but I'm glad to have you back on set once again.
Thank you very much. And to just get started on the breakfast show this morning, we are going to look at our health corner, but want you to keep those messages coming so that we can get interacting on our social media platform, especially on Facebook. Let's keep interacting on the Camnet Breakfast Show, but let's have a look at the health corner with the doctors.
Hi, good morning and welcome to today's health segment on the Breakfast Show. I am Dr. Nakubia Namfaya. This week we are talking about malaria, and yesterday we talked about what malaria is and how it comes about, and we discovered that malaria is a parasitic infection that is spread by mosquitoes, and this only happens when the mosquito bites you and is spread by the female mosquito. So today we want to discover what are the symptoms and signs of somebody that has malaria. How can you tell that you have malaria? So there are various symptoms, and there are so many symptoms, but I will highlight some of the symptoms that are very critical and cardinal to patients that have malaria. So these symptoms include patients who have malaria would have headaches, they will have a fever, they might have weakness, they will have body pains and just generally feeling ill. They might also have other symptoms like yellowing of the eyes. They might have abdominal pain. They might present with symptoms of vomiting, nausea, and sometimes they might have a large spleen. And this is because the red blood cells, as they are being destroyed in the body, they are destroyed in the spleen. And so the spleen will be getting bigger and bigger. So malaria is very prevalent in our communities, and there are so many people that die from malaria every year. In Zambia, we still have a number of people getting sick of malaria, and we need to be able to know that malaria is treatable and we can go to the hospital and get treatment as quickly as possible. So these are some of the symptoms to look out for in people that you suspect might have malaria. So if somebody has a headache, somebody has fever, somebody has nausea, vomiting, weakness, do not hesitate to take them to the hospital, because malaria can kill if it is not treated in good time. So today we are learning that malaria has various symptoms, and some of the symptoms, the common symptoms, are headache, fever, weakness, nausea, vomiting. So make sure that you look out for these things in your family members, your friends, and people in the community, so that you know when to get help and when to get treatment for malaria. So that's the end of today's segment. I hope you have learned something. Look out for other interesting topics that we will discover or talk about this week in the coming days. So keep watching The Breakfast Show and keep watching Camnet TV. Thank you so much for watching.
The Health Corner with Dr. Nakubiana Mufaya, and we hope that you did manage to get the topic of discussion for today. But as always, we do advise that you can always get in touch with us on the Camnet Breakfast Show, so that you can give us some of the topics that you'd want the doctor to tackle, and get you abreast with information pertaining to health and our well-being. And I hope you are keeping fit, because we are seeing that the month of September is something else. It is also coming with dust, and it is also likely to come with that coldness. I think maybe it's a shift from August to September that we are heading to, because we are seeing a situation where it is cold, and
yeah,
again it's windy.
Yeah, everything composed in one. Okay, it's windy. You don't know, even when you wake up, you don't know whether to carry your coat
or what, yeah,
or your jacket, or wear something light, because at the during the day it might get a little bit warm. You don't know, but that tells you something, that this is climate change, and these are the issues that, when we talk about addressing issues affecting to climate change, these are something that we should look on. Yeah,
you are right. And like yesterday, it was also threatening to rain in the morning.
Yes,
but it did not. So we are seeing that these weather variations are happening, and it has issues bordering on climate change. So we have to pay attention to such issues. Over time, our weather system has changed, and these are issues pertaining to climate change. But how we adapt to that is what is vital, and what is the government doing to put in place the necessary measures is also critical at this moment. But right about now, we have to look at our next segment and understand how the kwacha is performing this morning against other major convertibles. Let's have a look at how the kwacha is performing. Now, let's have a look. It's $1 US is buying at 19 kwacha 66 ngwe and selling at 20 kwacha 05 ngwe. The Greater British Pound is buying at 24 kwacha 75 ngwe and selling at 25 kwacha 23 ngwe. The Euro is buying at 21 kwacha 24 ngwe and selling at 21 kwacha 66 ngwe. The South African Rand is buying at 1 kwacha 05 ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 07 ngwe. So you can see those are your money market updated on the 29th of August 2023 at 0716 this morning. They are current as per financial institution that we monitor, and if you have a look at it, it shows you that the kwacha on the selling aspects has reached an alarming rate, which Miriam Kaimba and myself were afraid of every time we were giving you this feedback pertaining to how the kwacha is performing against other major convertibles. It is now 20 on the selling part against $1 US. So you need so much kwacha against a single dollar. That tells you how much our kwacha is depreciating.
And when you go to a nearby shop, the first thing you're going to be told, soko, is that dollar yakwera.
Yeah. So there is just right. So even when you bought your toothbrush at 5 kwacha, when you find it at 10 kwacha, they'll tell you $1 dollar.
The only thing will be $1 Even if you buy sugar because I usually get in town a 5 kg sugar at somewhere 80 kwacha. But with how the dollar is performing at the moment, you'll find it maybe it has gone slightest up, like 100 kwacha, 110, somewhere there.
Yeah, but that was foreseen given the circumstances that we find ourselves in. If you look at the rate of inflation, it hasn't been declining, but rather increasing. So it gets to tell us that we are not doing fine, and there's something we need to do about, and that something has to be done as urgent as possible, because if we do not keep inflation in check, this misbehaving by the kwacha will continue. But however, we are comforted by the central bank's intervention that they were also putting up measures such as regulating the monetary policy. That's the rate at which they are lending money, and at which also central banks, commercial banks, could lend money to clients. So that's revising the policy rate to a tune of 10%. That's quite significant. But all these measures are being put in place to keep inflation in check. But however, it also has its own consequences. The revision of the monetary policy rate. We saw the New Heritage Party President Sharakateka also expressing our concerns pertaining to the same decision that was taken by the central bank. So now we are seeing that that's where we are. But how are we going to get out of it? And that's why we have a government in place, and we are still hoping that Finance Minister Dr. Stumbeko Musokotwane, as well as the central bank led by Dr. Denny Karaya, they will continue to make sure that they put in place the necessary mechanisms to make sure that we keep our economy in check. However, last time we checked that Zambia, as you already know, is implementing an IMF bailout program. And this program is also punitive, and it also cumbersome in that it comes with some of the tight conditions, among them the removal of subsidies. And we saw part of the removal of subsidies pertaining to electricity, and that has also led to the cost of production, because electricity is an enabler to the economy. It plays a very, very vital role towards economic development. Miriam Kaimba. So if electricity on the other side is getting expensive, and we're seeing with this monthly review of fuel pump prices, we are seeing that there's also going to be a shift. Fuel continues to be expensive, but if you are a manufacturer and your argument is that to produce this thing that I'm selling to you, I'm using electricity, and electricity is expensive, so I have to transfer the cost to you, and to transport this commodity to one place to the other, it costs me fuel. So I have to make sure that I transfer this cost to you. So at the end of the day, the one who's bearing the burden is the consumer. So, like I always tell you, Miriam Kaimba, make sure you are not a consumer. Make sure you are also selling something.
I think I'm getting your advice now. So I'm trying to ensure that I'm not a consumer entirely. Yes, I can be, but not entirely. Everything. Yes, I'm trying by all means also to.
I want to be bringing my clothes for the adjustments. When you start operating as a fashion designer, as you anticipate. I want to be doing that so that we support your business.
But don't worry, I won't charge you that because I'm using transport fuel and stuff like that. I won't, put the burden on you. I won't do that. Anyway, in case you're watching us, this is the Camnet TV Breakfast Show, where we are looking at various trending issues that are happening in our country. You, our viewers who is watching us on Facebook, can take part in our conversation this morning by dropping us a message, and those watching us in the comfort of your home, you can call us so that we get interacted. Now, going forward, just zooming in some of the stories that made headlines yesterday, we did see a very young man, being murdered in, is it Kawata area, yes, who is a younger driver. It's quite sad. I believe that according to the information that our reporter was on the ground at their court, was that the man, the deceased, had gone for his usual work. He operates as a driver and a Yango. Yes, he had gone for his work, but he never returned home, and apparently he was only discovered dead. So according to the information that we have been given by the police, is that no suspect has been arrested yet. Investigations have been launched. We're yet to see what the police will establish. But it's very sad that, someone would lose such a life in such a manner, given the fact that, at that particular point, they had gone for work.
Yeah, so let's have a look at this story, and we'll be back on the other side. Keep it on Camnet TV.
She is grief-stricken as the life of her husband, Nicholas Chishimba, has been cut short in a gruesome manner by unknown people. Widow to the deceased, Alice Chishimba, tells Camnet News that her husband left home in Kamara South Saturday around 20 hours with a car to engage in the Yango business. Mrs. Chishimba said he was expected to return home around 23 hours, but that's when something amiss was noticed.
Then I asked her, he said, where was the client picked? I said the client was picked from Haile Selassie Road, which is Long Acres, to going to Kawata Site and Service. Then I said, what time did the trip end? It was like 24:11. And then from there, from Kawata, they said that's when the app went on busy.
She explains that the matter has been taken up by the police, who has since launched investigations in the matter.
And we went there. We reached, I couldn't recognize because there's no face. So I said, I'm asking if you can lift his leg. I want to see. They said there's no leg. And I said, look, I'm asking if you can lift the hand. I see. So they lifted his hand. I was able to raise the one and the coat that he wore. That's it for now. This is where we are. Just waiting for police.
Zambia Police Deputy Spokesperson Danny Mwale has confirmed the incident, stating that the body of the deceased was discovered in Kawata's site and service area.
The deceased was discovered by a 65-year-old woman of Kawata Site and Service on August 27, 2023, around 06:30 hours. He was found trapped between a motor vehicle, a Toyota Sienta, and a wall fence. Police officers who rushed to the scene discovered that the deceased had multiple injuries on his body. Sharp instruments are suspected to have been used in the act.
The community here remains in shock as they hope for tangible breakthrough from the police on the whereabouts of the culprits in the matter. For Camnet News, Afias Kaptula, Lusaka.
We do send our sincerely condolences to the bereaved family there. It's quite sad that, you know, a person would live, you know, would lose a life in such a manner. He had left home, you know, for his usual work. He operates as a taxi driver and unfortunately never returned home on that particular day later in the evening and was only discovered, you know, dead the following morning. It's a very, very sad situation, and I don't know what safety measures can be put in place for people who operate at night, especially, you know, these taxi drivers. Yeah,
it's quite a sad affair there, and we can only send our condolences to the bereaved family, like my colleague did state. And you too, our dear viewers, we want to get your messages on this story that we just played. I think for me, this issue is in Zambia, and I don't think you could murder somebody like that. That was being heartless. You know.
Yeah, and some other details that were gotten is that his crown was there, and some of his belongings were still there, were intact. So anyway, we wait to hear the police investigations, what details will be given, but coming to think of it, I don't know, is it someone he knew? Did someone just attack him from nowhere? Because again, you have to realize that this person was in the vehicle, he was operating. Okay, so according to the wife, she tried to, according to the small interview that our reporter tried to get from her, there was that, you know, she did require some, you know, details on where his last trip ended, at what time it ended, and then she was told around somewhere, is it midnight 23, somewhere there, but no news. They couldn't track what other trips he did make on that particular day.
Yeah, so that's quite a sad affair there, and we hope that the police will bring the culprits to book as they continue to investigate this matter. We can only hope for the best so that justice can be saved on that family. It is indeed a sad story. But moving on the program, let's also have a look at a story where a 38-year-old man of Lusaka's Kamara South area okay, rather, this is a story that I looked at already, and this is a story where exactly a month after local government and road development minister Garin Kombo called on all property and business owners in Lusaka Central Business District to put refuse bins and beautify their premises. Most shops in the CBD have defied this directive and are still operating without waste bins at their shops. So let's have a look at this story. We'll be back. Keep it on Camnet.
This is the Lusaka Central Business District, a month after street vendors were removed. The city looks clear, however remains dirty, despite Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Garin Kombo directing all shop owners to put refuse bins in their business premises. A check by this reporter found some business houses have hit to the directive while others is business as usual. Those spoken to suggested that the local authority intensifies inspections and that those who be found wanting be sanctioned.
They have to buy the bin to put just between the shop. At least the corridor it looks clean. Can help the councils.
It's us who are careless. If us we are careless, then these people they will be like they are not working just because we are not maintaining clean. But at the end of the day, what we want is our town to be clean.
It's one thing to make pronouncements. It's one thing to give directives, but when it comes to the sanctity and the functionality of the city, in particular the CBD, the council needs to be proactive. They need to start going into every major street, approaching every major shop owner, making them aware of this directive that every building, every shop has to have at least a bin in front of them. Everybody has to paint their buildings. If you don't enforce, by enforcing we mean council police going to every shop saying there's this new directive, we are expecting you to comply because it will contribute to the functionality of the city. If we just leave it at saying no, Minister Lusaka city in the CBD is clear, but it's not clean.
Those who have not yet put bins in their shops told this reporter off camera that all that is needed is a mindset change, as their businesses previously had refuse bins but did not make any difference. On 27th last month, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Garin Kombo directed all shop owners in the CBD to put refuse bins in their trading places. Mr. Kombo, in a statement dated 27th July 2023, urged all shop and property owners to cooperate by meeting this requirement by 31st August 2023. With only 3 days to go, we await to see what action will be taken against those who defy the ministerial directive. Vincent Piri for Camnet TV News, Lusaka.
Quite interesting. I hope the directive will be adhered to by shop owners in the CBD of Lusaka to ensure that they paint their respective shops.
Yeah, you know, cleanliness is next to godliness is a common phrase, but we ignore it.
The funny part I got was some of the shop owners our reporter spoke to were that they did have those bins, but nothing changed. So what they need is mindset. But this is a different situation we are in. So they need to ensure that they have, because it's a directive.
Yeah, mindset change is vital for them and also us, people who move through the streets. If we are not doing the right thing, it is difficult, because if you see the bin, you do not use it, you would rather throw in the street, then there's something wrong upstairs.
And you know, there's a story that I've seen that is trending. Anyway, it was done by one of our tabloids, which says that if you are seen littering around the CBD, throwing litters anyhow, you're depressed. It's a sign of depression. So all those who, when they're done, you know, taking their water and then they just throw a bottle anyhow, that's depression. That's a sign of depression. So I'm sure we have a lot of depressed people in the country.
Yeah, but we have to make sure how do we manage this depression of throwing papers anyhow.
Exactly.
I think we have a huge task.
Exactly. And you know, I don't know, but these mental health experts said, you know, if you are seen throwing litters anyhow, Patrick, anyhow, That's a sign of depression. Now, a lot of people wouldn't take this serious, and they would just
because that's where I agree. Because
exactly.
You don't even mind who's going to pick that paper, or how long that paper will be, or what do you make of that? Yeah. You don't mind?
You don't
I think
mind.
It's like you are stressed upstairs. So if that stress, you are moving it all over, you understand? So yeah, to a certain degree, I do agree, and true to that. And let's get interacting, our dear viewers, and thank you for those of you who are watching us, who are telling us where you are watching us from. But we want to hear from you regarding the stories that we are looking at, because your opinions matter at the end of the day, because we want to shape a country, and shaping a country requires collective effort, and your ideas may just be the ones that the country is looking for. So keep those messages coming and tell us your views. We did look at two stories. One story pertaining to the murder of a taxi driver in Lusaka's Kamwara South, in Kabwata constituency, rather. Then we also did a story where we are looking at the local government ministry pertaining to issues that border on the issue of painting their shops, that SI that was issued, so that circular that was issued pertaining to beautifying their buildings, making sure that they put up bins. So those things, if they are not being done, that means people are being defiant, and they're not listening to what the authorities are calling on them.
Exactly. Indeed, our viewers, you can take part in our conversation this morning and just contribute on what you think about those two stories that we played. What is your view with regards to that? Moving forward from the courts, we did see yesterday where the Lusaka Magistrate Court declined an application by Socialist Party leader Dr. Fred Membe to issue a bench warrant against the Inspector General of Police, Grafel Musamba. You know, this application came after, because this is a complaint. First of all, just to give a background with this case it comes after, you know, Dr. Membe issued a complaint against the Inspector General of Police against defamation, you know, issue. So he has rather taken the Inspector General of Police to the court on defamation charges. So now the matter was in court yesterday. It came up for mention. Apparently, the Inspector General of Police, who in this matter is referred to as the accused person, was not before court, and Mr. Dr. Membe, rather through his lawyers, did, you know, request the court to issue a bench warrant against the police, the IG, because he was not before court on that particular time. But rather we did see, you know, the court declining that application, saying, you know, this is the first time that the matter is coming before court. Henceforth, you know, the court cannot just issue a bench warrant against someone. It's the first time. It's not like he has been doing that. Anyway, we'll give him a benefit of doubt, and we'll ensure that next time when the matter comes before court, which is the 11th of September, he will make his appearance before court. But anyway, let's get to look at that story, and we'll continue with our discussion when we come back.
Mr. Musamba occupies a very high position as Inspector General of Police. He's a very important man, but he's not above the law. The law required him to come to court today. He didn't. He could have been issued with a bench warrant, but the court exercised some lenience because it's the first time he has done so. So on the 11th of September, he needs to be here. There is a need to realize that the exercise of power must be a constant practice of self-limitation and modesty.
So that is what transpired before the magistrate court yesterday, where Dr. Fred Membe appeared before the Lusaka Magistrate Court in relation to a matter where he has taken the Inspector of General Police to the court on defamation allegations. Anyway, moving forward, we also did see another story where the Director of Public Prosecution issued a certificate denying 11 accused persons involved in the alleged goat scam not to be admitted to bail. The certificate that was presented by the state prosecutors before Lusaka Chief Resident Davis Chiwili yesterday afternoon was protested by the accused through their lawyers on the basis that it is an irregularity. The 5 Egyptians and 6 Zambians have been charged with 1 count of espionage. How do you even pronounce that?
Espionage.
Espionage. I tried pronouncing it, I don't know how many times.
And you are lucky I did not compel you to do a report yesterday.
But anyway, it is alleged that the 11 accused on the 13th of August 2023 at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, whilst acting together, entered a protective place, which is the Kenneth Kaunda Airport, for purpose that was prejudicial to the safety and interests of the Republic of Zambia. The 11 were recently arrested by the Drug Enforcement Commission in connection with alleged goat scam involving 5.7 million United States dollars, which was intercepted at the airport by the Drug Enforcement Commission. It's a quite interesting case, but anyway, the matter has been adjourned to today at 14 hours for a ruling. The court is supposed to give its ruling on whether it can go ahead to listen to the application by the state not to grant the 11 accused.
I have important questions, Miriam.
Yeah.
I have very important questions. What differentiates a Zambian prisoner or detainee or remandee to those guys? Because I didn't see that famous blue vehicle we call Kasalanga.
Kasalanga.
I think they are traveling through. They're being moved through using a bus.
Okay, one thing that we should understand is that those buses have recently come. We have seen, not only them, they have used those buses, but we have seen other prisoners using those buses. But earlier on, we did see that famous vehicle that you're talking about, the Kasalanga, taking other prisoners. We have prisoners who go to court as far as Chongwe, and where that time, other suspects were already taken. So that vehicle, specifically, those 11 suspects were brought with that particular vehicle because the other vehicle was occupying other inmates. Yeah, and the time that the case yesterday was concluding, it was around 19 somewhere there when everyone was done with all their cases. The court was only listening to that one particular matter. Anyway, we are yet to get the ruling of the court because we did see the defense counsels who are representing the accused person, saying that it was not in order for the state to present the court with the certificate that the Director of Public Prosecution has issued not to allow the 11 accused person to be admitted to bail. According to the defense counsel is that the magistrate court, because basically those 11 were only appearing before the magistrate court for explanation of the charge. According to the case they are facing, that case is tried by the High Court. So they were only appearing for mention and explanation of the charge, awaiting a certificate of committal to be transferred to the High Court so that they can start with their trial proceeding. But after the explanation of the charge, we did see the state, rising up and saying, we have another application which is coming from the Director of Public Prosecution, who was issued that these people should not be admitted to bail because this is for the safety of the nation, and looking at the magnitude of the case itself, the nature of the case, in short. But anyway, we are yet to see the outcome, the ruling itself, whether this court will admit that production of that document, because the argument has also been that court is not, listening to, cannot get any evidence, any application, cannot hear anything, because it is not the jurisdiction court to listen to the matter. If the state wanted to make an application of such a nature, it should have been at the High Court. So the defense are arguing that application was done in a haste, which they were supposed to wait until they issue, first of all, a certificate of committal to the High Court, then they can produce that.
But me, I know that the defense team is aware of all those provisions.
Yes.
But the technique is also probably to buy time. You know, you are also able. While they are making a ruling on that, you have already making. They are already inside there. You already been delayed. They are waiting for a ruling. A ruling will be given. Probably it may be in favor of those to say no. Let's go and hear this arrangement before the High Court, and the process will be restarted all over again, and then you have another time to say, okay, let's give the verdict on this ruling again, probably on Friday, just on that subject. We can move a lot of we can have a lot of back and forth arrangements in that score. So, but we hope to see what will be the outcome from the courts for pertaining to that aspect, the argument and counter argument. That's what law is about. It's about being clever. It's about counter arguments and how are you interpreting the law? It's interesting. Let's see how this case will go. It is a test, a serious case and a test for our judicial system on how we are going to try this case and how we're going to make, and our investigative wings and also, because they did make the arrest. So it's we are going to see how we eventually wind up this case, which is very important. So moving on, we have to, before we usher in our guest, we're going to look at another story where the Clean Cities Initiative, there has been some people calling on the government to criminalize the indiscriminate dumping of waste. But the Clean Cities Initiative has been of the view that that is not necessary, given that Zambia already has sufficient laws that are in place to make sure that the country is beautified, and make sure that people who, for example, indiscriminately dump waste are able to be held accountable. This is a story that was done by Nelson Zulu, where the Clean Cities Initiative are calling on authorities to just improve on the implementation of those existing laws. For example, Miriam Kayemba, venting is a criminal activity, is a crime in Zambia. But do you see enforcing it? No. Only now we have seen them enforcing it. So if we enforce all the laws, let's say open air burning in Zambia is a crime. But you and I, we see, for example, in Chawama, where we have this serious open air burning in the middle of the community under the watch of the Lusaka City Council. It gets to that same arrangement of poor enforcement of laws that are existing. So if we adequately enforce those laws, would go make a lot of progress as a country. So let's have a look at that story, and we'll be back on the other side. Keep it on Camnet TV, not just another channel.
While the government seeks to have a clean and greener environment in the country, for some time waste management has been a thorn on the flesh of many citizens. In an attempt to champion the agenda of cleanliness, government spearheaded the removal of vendors on the streets. But with the removal of vendors on various streets, the perspective is cleanliness will be promoted. But some Lusaka residents are calling for the government to introduce a law that bars indiscriminate disposal of waste in the city.
Government because my countries yavanzati sivavomekeza kutaya chili chonse romaleba chasunga taya chili chonse town mulidoti simuoneka musha town iliyonse ifunika panyumba paliponse pafunika bayira
safunika kutayira chepansi funika tenga kabini kopyangiramu waende watamu muchipini chikolo pandu kaifidya zambireta doti mutauni yero mutani monika kilini so funika trisi wonse twambona cha hapa singa tailepo chindwa trisi pari kilini wanyamuna fila tumbamini kunutaya wandutayira mbi chabenchi funika kai mutani manja hapa mwankara kilini.
Meanwhile, Clean Cities Initiative Chief Executive Officer Watts Mwila is concerned that the various local authorities are failing to enforce existing laws on waste management. Mr. Mwila is however challenging local authorities countrywide to commence enforcing laws that address the challenges of waste management in the country.
Each individual feels like they can do anything without and scot-free. So our appeal is that the councils who are mandated to enforce these laws should now start carrying out their jobs, because at the end of the day, one wonder what is the essence of having the laws which you cannot use against the offenders. So as Clean Cities Initiative, working with the local authorities, we want to urge them that it is time that now than never, that make sure that the perpetrators or the offenders or those who breach the law are punished. And that sets as a precedence, because once you do that, then you expect that the next person will not repeat the same things.
Nelson Zulu for Camnet News, Lusaka.
Quite interesting. We now transition into our first interview, where we have been joined by the National Restoration Party Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Martin Mulenga, who is helping us discuss various issues pertaining to current affairs. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
We're glad to have you on set.
The pleasure is mine.
How is NAREP this morning?
NAREP is okay. Yeah, sure.
Interesting. To just get started on our conversation this morning, Mr. Mulenga, a lot of things have been happening in this country. And let's have a look at, we had a planned activity for the Opposition Patriotic Front in Mandevu constituency, where they were supposed to hold a rally. I understand that NAREP was part of the UPND alliance, and you are keen to support the alliance's policies and objectives. But however, as an alliance, did you assure the people of Zambia that there's not going to be an issue of political victimization or undermining other political parties, that the political parties are going to have the liberty to undertake their political activities? Mm-hmm. Now, in the case of what we saw involving the PF, where the police denied them a go-ahead to be able to undertake their rally, where they were supposed to have launched a strategic plan. What are your comments on that?
Yeah, must first confirm that what happened in Zengalome was that the PF were given an alternative date to which they were supposed to have their rally. And the date that was given was the 30th of September. So having to deny and being given an alternative date, I think they are two different things. And at the same time, you know that the PF quite hypocritical in the manner that they are doing things. Under the reign of the Patriotic Front, we saw how they were heavy-handed to ourselves and the UPND the time they were the PF were in power. The Minister of Justice was the acting president of the Patriotic Front, Mr. Given Lovinda. And when we are telling them to say what you're doing as regards allowing people to come together, gather and have meetings, the time that Given Lovinda was Minister of Justice, he did not pay attention to that. How brutal their thugs were at a time that they were in power, that even having just to wear something red, City Market, Intercity, or yet any other place in Lusaka and Copperbelt, you are asking for yourself, but look at this time around. We can confirm that they go and apply. They are given an alternative date. And you become defiant. And you want to go and gather at a time that they're giving you an alternative date. It speaks to arrogance again. When the police advise you that you cannot hold this meeting, you can only have it this period of time, and at this particular date, you go ahead and go and pretend that nothing had happened. We call for responsibility on the part of the PF. They should have gotten the message the PF had given, the government had given them. At the same time, Given Lovinda, who led that group, knew that there are procedures to follow. Once the police probably you're not satisfied with the answer they give you, you got the minister to appeal. If the minister fails, probably they didn't give you a satisfactory answer, the procedure allows you to go to court and seek redress. These are procedures that I feel that Honorable Given Leminda, having served as Minister of Justice, having served as Minister of Justice, I think he knows all these processes. But to go ahead and pretend as if he's blank and don't even know what he's doing and tell people that let's go and have a showdown, I would call it. It's quite unfortunate.
Now, my follow-up question, Mr. Mulenga, would be that is it the case of revenge? Because while you were in office, you undermined us as the PF, and now that you are in opposition, want to give you a taste of your own medicine. And is it a case of you also backtracking on whatever you said to say, whatever happened to us, according to, for example, when President Hichilema and you people who were behind him were campaigning, he said, whatever happened against us, we don't want it to happen to you. No wonder we want to make sure that things are done properly. Now, is it a case of revenge and you're also backtracking on whatever you assured that you would do pertaining to creating a conducive political environment?
The thing is, they tell you that you're not going to do it now because of these reasons, but you've been given this alternative date.
How is you getting a date that I'm not comfortable with? I tell you when I want to watch my kitchen party or my chiranga muriro, and you tell me that you cannot watch this meeting, and you watch it, even if it is a country.
Basically,
I think the country has
we're talking about freedom to assemble.
To assemble.
Basically, you just have to notify the police.
Freedom must be managed.
You have to
even democracy must be managed. You have the right, but my rights, where they start from, that's where other people's rights also start from. So democracy demands for responsibility from all of us.
Okay, what is wrong about them?
That's why we have a constitution.
What is wrong about them meeting?
There's nothing wrong. That's why we have the constitution. And in that constitution, there are rights that are put in there for all of us to follow.
Exactly.
And you know, the good thing about leadership, about democracy is that we have the Bill of Rights. And in those rights, there are liberties that all of us must enjoy. But as we enjoy them, we need to enjoy with responsibility. And the police enforce what is in the constitution. They are within the law for them to tell them to say, you've notified us? Yes. But as police in charge of security, we tell you that you're chilanga muliro. Per weekend, kukaba traffic, kukaba na road not be saloku because we are doing maintenance of this road. I'm just giving an example. So imwe, mkakwata Friday. It's just good for you. Having to deny you to say you not have it is another. And the PF we are not denied.
We have a view here from one of our viewers who was watching us on our various social media platform, who says the UPND is behaving childish by preventing the Patriotic Front rally.
And again, let's contextualize this.
As an alliance partner.
Let's contextualize this. They were not denied. They were not prevented. They were given an alternative date. Is that the right context in which things are? I think that's the point.
Honestly, Mr. Mulenga, do you have to get up to 30 days? Up to 30 September, even you as narrative provided it was you.
I'm not police. Obviously, you and I know that I'm not police, just like you are not police.
But so do you feel the police action is fair and justifiable?
I can't speak for the police.
Okay, but just your observation.
As a law-abiding
citizen. Because what seems like this action by the police is exciting you who are in the ruling party. It's exciting you because probably you do not even want that meeting to take place even at all.
I think the Patriotic Front are law-abiding citizens, just like any of us. And if I'm a law-abiding citizen, if I'm given to say this is what you're going to do, I think it's our responsibility to abide by what we've been given. We can't have a country where what I want, because I feel this is what I want, I have to do it, even if it's my right. But I need to know that this right that I have must be managed by the people that are given the responsibility to manage all of us in terms of security.
I have a simple question.
Yeah, sure.
Why do you think the United Party for National Development Administration is revising the Public Order Act?
Yeah, actually, the PF had an opportunity to have had.
Why are they revising it in the first place?
You know that what we have is a cake. You get it? So now, with modern democracy, there is need for things to be changed. And those can only be changed if there's consensus. And our colleagues, the UPN, are only 2 years in government. The PF were 10 years in government. The time that Kampyongo, Mr. Luvinda were ministers, I think we cried a lot about having to revise these things. But you know, power intoxicated them to levels that they stopped listening to anybody. They stopped listening. But now, I want to talk it. I want to put it like they're testing their own medicine. But we are saying, because we want to revenge, like you earlier alluded to. I want to say, no. I'm trying to tell you that I'm calling for responsibility, even on their part as PF. The PF, if they were responsible enough, the 10-year period they had, 10 years. But PF, Chalo will break your bones.
But that's why Zambians made a decision to say we do not want this kind of leadership. We want the UPND.
The PF, that's why we voted them out with a very big margin. But now, what are we saying?
Now there's that. Are you trying to imitate whatever the bad things the PF used to do?
No, not at all.
And are you also slowly getting intoxicated as part of the alliance?
No.
I'm sure you, as Narepu, are supporting the alliance. Are you also getting intoxicated with power that you say, okay, let them dance to their own tune?
Not at all. When you're in leadership, I'm trying to admit that it calls for responsibility.
They failed even to revise the Public Order Act. So that is unarguable. They failed even to make sure that they uphold the rights of citizens.
Yes.
And citizens were tired and said, no. We need alternatives. We need to make sure there's someone in office who's going to help us do that. And President Hakainde Hichilema did provide that assurance.
Yes.
And Zambian people did give him a vote.
Yes.
And now that he's in office, should we continue to blame the PF and continue to do things they did to other political parties? Or what would be your view on this question?
I feel that the PF are in this, and they are the right people actually to be lobbying now that they are out of power to see how the Public Order Act can be revised. Like you put it clearly that there are other organizations like UNEP and many others that feel that this must be revised. I think it's about time all of us put our heads together and start discussing those pertinent issues. And it's just good for the nation. And within this 5-year period, we feel that the UPND and all of us that feel that changes must be put in place, we need to start lobbying now, which is a good thing.
Interesting. Well, all dear viewers, in case you're just joining us, you are watching the Camnet Breakfast Show with me, Patrick Soko, and Miriam Kaimba. And in studio, we have the National Restoration Party Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Martin Mulenga. He's helping us to discuss various issues and pertaining to the performance of the UPND 2 years in office and other current affairs. You too, our dear viewers, can get through to our lines and get interacting with our guests and give us those messages also on our Facebook page so that we can get to exchange ideas. Remember that democracy is about tolerating the views from someone you might not like. And that's what we are looking at this morning. Various issues pertaining to our governance as a country. Now, moving on, Mr. Mulenga, I want to find out from yourself pertaining to another interesting aspect. You've been defending the UPND policy as part of the UPND and as a member of the UPND Alliance. How easy are you finding it to justify the high cost of meal?
You know, the way you put it, it's not about defending. It's about having to explain to our people. I think we should, the way we look at politics, it's not about having to put a posture that is in this fashion, but how to help our people to understand where we are and why have we found ourselves in this position. Take, for instance, the issue that we talked about the mini meal. I think we all know that the shop that Miriam goes to, Mr. Soko go to, and myself are the same shops. So if the mini meal is expensive, we all feel the same burden. And we are saying, what is government doing about this situation? Number one, we know that this government is saying, let's procure cheaper fertilizer. I think this time around, if you go in town, the fertilizer is around 650, 700 kwacha. Last year, this time around, the fertilizer was fetching 1,200, 1,100. And the opposition political parties and our people are not taking time to go and check these facts. Today, 650. I mean, it's almost half the price it was fetching last year. So this in itself means that the farmer that is going to buy fertilizer now and have a 10 acre of land to cultivate mealie, obviously they'll spend less. If they spend less, FRA, as we all know that, because they've spent less, let's buy the grain at a cheaper price. By so doing, the mealie in return will be cheaper. So these are measures that the government is putting into place. And we all know that last year we had the problem, the FISIP was problematic. We also had the issue of having to import fertilizer from very far, expenses involved and all that, and the fertilizer became expensive. And measures are being put in place. So we are saying things are getting to normalize so that our people can buy the mealie at a cheaper price. And interventions are there. ZNS is coming in, the government procuring many milling plants, 21 milling to going into milling mills, ZNS and all that. These are remedial measures. But ultimately, the government is saying, let's put money into manufacturing of fertilizer. And this year, money has been put aside by an investor that is putting up a plant for producing fertilizer locally. So we are looking forward to cheaper milling probably next year because of these measures that this government is putting in.
I want to, before you come in, Miriam, I want to disagree when you say a price of fertilizer. Which fertilizer is fetching at 600? Because last time I checked, I think it was when the kwacha was even better. It was at 923 kwacha. And now we are seeing that the dollar is now going towards 20 kwacha.
Mr. Soko.
Now, what factors are determining that price,
Mr. Soko?
And which shops? I will tell
you with facts, because our people that are our people that are watching. If there is one that is watching from town, I'll challenge them to go in one of the agri shops now, as we are speaking this time around, any that is open, and call us to say how much is fertilizer, urea or D. I checked just last week, and these are facts. I'm not here to come and excite anybody, because these are facts that our people out there would confirm, and this is just true.
Yeah.
When we look at the complaints that we're getting from various opposition political parties, various stakeholders, including members of the public, especially when we get from various opposition political parties, most of the times you would want to align it that they are just politicking. But when we talk about how the residents, the community members are complaining over the high cost of living, and you being part of the UPND, how would you measure your 2 years in office? Are you going in the right trajectory in addressing various issues that are affecting the country at large?
I must accept that things are not at their best, and people have the right to complain when things are not working out well, which is just correct. And that's how come I can tell you that this government is putting up measures to making sure that we have a better life in terms of having to afford most of the commodities that we need in terms of food and all that. This government, when it got into office, we found that this country was ruined economically. We had a mountain of debt. This country was debt-ridden. If it were a person, I would say it was in the ICU. And when you find someone who is in the ICU, you can't just give him a jab, boom, it's not possible. When you find an economy that was ailing in the manner that the PF left this economy, it takes measures that need to be put in place. One of the measures was, how do we handle this debt? That's how come you saw this president told us to say we need to find ways and means to restructure this debt. And within 2 years, we had part of the debt being negotiated. The PF took them 7 years. 4 ministers, I don't know, it's 5 ministers of finance who were globetrotting, Paris, Zambia. They couldn't manage to get that. The PF are the ones that brought in Lazard as a measure to have their debt restructured at a tune of $5 million. Even then, that did not work until they lost power. The UPND came into power. The first thing the president did was to have the Minister of Finance put in office. That's how urgent the president realized the magnitude of the debt was. And we saw efforts being put in place. The president himself did not sit. He needed to get involved and make sure that this is actualized. And we had that actualized. That's not mean achievement. Then we are saying we found that the mines had situations, KCM, Mopani issues. We found them early. ICU situation. Milingolungu and the team during the time of President Edgar Lungu, that became a place where the PF cadres were getting contracts. We know that. Chandakawe got a contract, $17 million, barely registering a company for 1 month. And many others were getting contracts from there in a situation that we cannot explain. It became a cash cow for PF. We saw how the members of parliament under the Patriotic Fund were buying those Eiger buses to give constituencies because of the money they were looting from the mines. And everyone was complained. This president comes into power and says, let's not have this litigation that will take us decades without having to find a solution. What do? Let's renegotiate with Vendetta and find a common ground. Discuss on the table. How do we agree that we can have the mines being revamped? And we are heading towards that direction. And that's how I think a responsible government handles its own. What we saw in KCM was quite airport. Leadership. I think they failed.
But have you removed the KCM
it's 2 years down the line?
Have you removed KCM in the ICU?
Yes, it's 2 years down the line, but you have not resolved the issue surrounding to KCM.
And Mopani as well, because Mopani is a non-controversial issue.
The minister did issue a statement to say we need to trade carefully as we engage ourselves.
You have to trade for 2 years.
For 2 years? Yes. We're not talking about small things. We're talking about contractors that haven't been paid a lot of money. But we're talking about having seen contracts not being done well. And you know, this is, I would say, the mines are the oxygen of I would say, of the copper belt. And our people in copper belt are languishing. Others did supply, they haven't been paid anything.
So now they're saying for 2 years while you are negotiating, is that responsible?
No, what we are saying is that where we are now, the minister did issue a statement. We have found people who are expected to do this.
We have done that statement over and over again.
But really, it's like you want to get married. Wafisha for 25 years, when we are negotiating. Who are you soko kupafi? Kuma soko. The one finish 25 years who are like Stefana for the Toroshi, don't show me the shop and the Fafi. You need to take your time, especially talking about national assets.
While people are dying,
you are looking for a solution.
While people are becoming destitute.
Who would like people to be destitute?
But when we're talking about
when we are moving about agency,
how much time do we need? Because this is a matter of agency that we're
looking at. You mentioned a very important point, which I agree with you. Mining is an engine of the copper belt, and the entire country. If you look at how the Kwacha is performing, part of the reflection is because of our we are not exporting as much as we should because these mines are not operating at optimum level. Now the question we're asking is that does it have to take that long while other economic fundamentals are collapsing, such as the ability for us as a country to address
as open and employed thousands of our people? We know that Kansanshi in Solwezi has expanded at a tune of over $3 billion, and there are many activities happening there. In Northwestern, These are things that are happening in the northwestern province. But really, we're not discussing those. Nickel mine, the other side. But what we are discussing now is these two mines. But we're not saying that it's the only thing that we have. No. But because our people are affected adversely of what is happening, this government is saying, let's tread carefully. I've given on the KCM, I did explain. Mopani, now they're saying they have got investors that are willing to come and take up the investment. But now, before we do that, the government has actually come out to say we'll be announcing soon, meaning that they've done their due diligence. Now it's a matter of actualizing to see the way through.
What due diligence? Because I'm wondering, because if this government does do the due diligence, how did we went into exporting too much of our staple food and then getting ourselves into a minimum crisis?
What we have in Zambia is not scarcity of the commodity. What we have is the affordability. So these are things that we need to explain into context.
Because the demand is high, I think you understand the role of demand and supply.
I do.
So if you understand that analogy, probably it brings us to the price that we have at the moment.
No, Mr. Soko, the issue is this. The price of a 50 kg bag of grain had gone up to 260. And if the 50 kg had gone to 280, how many bags of breakfast meal can we get from there? Plus the cost involved and all that put together to allow a farmer, let me finish this, let me explain it very well. To allow a farmer at the end of the day get or recoup a profit. So the government says, let's not kill a farmer. Let's give the farmer a price for which they'll be happy having been in farming. So they had to be careful. Had they put the price of grain at say 120, you and I are going to be happy today. But the farmer, who is supposed to feed us next day, was going to say, it's not the right product to go to. Let me go to soya beans, millet, and all that. In the end, we're going to have no maize come next year. So this government had to think through the cycle and say, because we need this product and we need to encourage our farmer, this is how we do it. So let's not work things upside down. First, let's look at the cost of production, the issue to do with fertilizer. And like I did explain, we're bringing it down, having plants that will produce fertilizer. Then the government will have the audacity next year to say the floor price will be at this price, because we know that we've done our part as government to have the cost of production lowered. And that's how you're doing business.
You mentioned an interesting aspect, but now you say they made a decision to say, okay, let the consumer suffer. But remember, the consumer also has a stagnant salary. You know, because this economy should be turning. You understand? You give a 1% increment to the civil servants, and you take away through a bag of minimum.
You take away through
so is that kind of
Is it a fair treat?
Is it a fair treatment?
No.
Because if the wages of the workers are increasing, do you think anybody else will be complaining, Mr. Mulinga?
Let me explain it this way.
Is the government not firing in all angles, firing in selectively?
No. It's a win-win situation that we want at the end of the day. The farmer must continue to produce. And you and I believe that we're here because of farmers.
Is it because most of you who are in UPND are farmers and want to safeguard yourselves?
No, that very far from the truth. And actually, we encourage even you, Mr. Soko, and my sister to go into farming. But really, let me put it this way.
Let's give ourselves a good price.
No, not at all. Let's look at production in totality. When you look at production, let's just look at the end product. The product is after all these processes have been through. So now, if you want to reduce the three of your cycle, have your plus 33. First, you have to base, and that's what the government is saying. You have to base, ku fertilizer, ku sheni umutengo, kunga mwawesha mfundo mwawesha mtengo kuli siti mwawesha mfundo kuli fisya mfundo wawela fama nga salima abike inyanje pamusebo fyonse na fyambo kubwela na wakomfa winu ati apande chichapa 120 awo mfundo kaidwaji bwela nomba nyambyo kuwesha unga mbwesha mfundo onine wasoko nituke kalashani pachana chaka so vindu vile vya konkana na mufupiti uteko bulenda konkana na mufupitile so le kantu bombe fwe uteke tubwesho mufundo kati wabwesho mufundo abantu besina bakabwesha amataba ya bwela unga bukabwela everybody bombe lapho.
Unga is a staple food, and Zambia is, the why it becomes and security.
Yes.
So now you'd rather suffocate your people because this commodity is now becoming scarce in households.
Which areas?
In terms of people managing to buy that same 25.
We're talking about in terms of people managing
to buy.
Now I'll give you an example.
People are eating once, but you said 3 times a day.
Has to pay rentals at 200, sometimes at 150 kwacha. We have done these stories. They will have to weigh, why should I buy mini meal at the price that I'm paying my rentals? Why should you buy mini meal at 280 kwacha? And yet you're paying your rentals at 200 kwacha. So these are the arguments. Don't you think this is one way of suffocating these people?
Actually, I sympathize with my sisters. I've got sisters in Mississippi, in Kalingalinga, and everywhere. And even my neighbors, where I'm coming from, we are all in the compound. But the fact still remains, how do we address? It's one thing to have a problem. You get the point? But the ability to address is quite key. Just like any man that can fall, it's not a problem. But how you stand? This government, let's stand.
So, are you not even going to accept that probably you deceived the Zambian people when you people were campaigning in 2021 that minimum will be cheaper, but 2 years down the line, minimum is the most expensive and reaching the all-time high in the history of this country. Can't you admit that that was a deceptive campaign message?
Not at all.
You can't admit.
You also know that, Mr. Soko, and my sister here, that we no longer have subsidies.
But why can't you admit? Because it wasn't you were saying that, it wasn't people saying that no, when you remove subsidies and no. The campaign message was that you people were part of those convoys where you were moving with this to my measured
cooking oil,
to Pamela and everything. You were saying this is not conducive for Zambian people. But now,
2 years down the
line, even those who are working in government have been now compared to Pamela. And you are saying you cannot admit that there was probably a deceptive campaign message there.
Deceit wasn't there.
It was an accurate campaign message.
The campaign message was meant for Zambian people to listen to. And what any government...
To vote, not to listen, I think so.
Yeah, to listen and vote. Because you don't just vote. You listen to the message. You buy into the idea.
But lack the practicality.
You buy into the idea. Then once you buy into the idea, you actualize it into now casting the vote to the person that resonates with you. And the message that the UPND had resonated with Zambian people. Most of us, it did resonate with us. And we voted for the UPND. Now, what are we saying? The dynamics at play here, where when you inherit a government that has collapsed economically, to pick up pieces to make things work, to bring about CDF, to bring up free education, to bring about devolution. There are many things that are so complex that you don't have to turn around things in 1 year. But the good thing is that we've seen things happening. Like I mentioned last time that I was here, you're not talking about cooking oil, for instance, that the price of cooking oil that has come down to 168. No one is talking about it. No one is talking about CDF, how they're doing fine in CDF, the number of employees that this government is recruiting. We need to be talking about that. Because you see, to change an economy, yes, minimum is quite key. The thousands and thousands of our youths that are getting employment now are not mean achievement. And
those that are being turned home after being selected for jobs.
Over 60,000, 5,000 more are coming, 3,000 more in the health sector coming.
And Mr. Kelvin Waliafume says that is a scandal.
Which scandal?
All those things you're talking about, they are scandals.
But the concentrate nakapatika wakakusheko panono. Otherwise, you get the point.
Talking about
so let's talk about real issues here.
All those things, they say CDF. Which constituency has received 28.3 million as we speak?
So how are they buying the graders?
The entire 28.3 million.
I'm asking, how are they buying the graders? How much the grader?
Which constituency has received? That's the question people who sit on this private seat you are sitting are asking us to say.
You know how managed is based. Let me explain to you how managed is based. Let me tell you how managed is based in CDF. Let me explain. First, the president said, these land cruisers have been given. They're not attached to the money that you're going to be receiving. Each constituency has been allocated a land cruiser. Expensive, which we didn't have in this country. Members of parliament were using their family vehicles. Some of them were even complaining. But this government says each constituency should have a land cruiser. And they have them. We saw them launched in the showgrounds. Then this government is saying, we'll be giving you CDF. Pay ye. This is the amount. No man can pay a question, but some pay a shimbi. Mufua peshes some paper mkumake. Just last week, we saw how Minister Kabus, in the Copper Belt, Minister of Medium Scale, was giving grants and to the women in Chingola. Things are happening.
Would it be a question of misplaced priorities or where you, for example, you say you have more money under CDF and yet you haven't addressed the basic need, for example, which is, for example, making sure that people have shelter, have a decent meal?
The context, again, I'll come back to context.
Would it be that an issue of misprioritization? Because you mentioned quite well that we have quite a huge sum of money under CDF. But what can we do instantly to make sure that we ramp up production and make sure, first of all, the needs of the people in terms of making sure that you are fit and you are able to go and work is addressed? Then you move to these other needs. I think you are privy to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
If I were to tell you, is education a misplaced priority for a country? Is health a misplaced priority for a country? Is debt restructuring a misplaced priority for the country? Let me explain to you, Mr. Soko, and our viewers out there.
Education.
Mr. Soko, you are able to read English because of the education that was imparted on you. Let me explain.
Ask you about the
give me time to explain. Let me explain and put it right.
Yes.
For any country to develop.
But it's the same government that said that Zambians cannot eat roads. You remember,
Mr. Soko, you need to have right people. And the right people must have the right education. And this government says free education from grade 1 to grade 12. From these educated people who have farmers, who have journalists like you, Mr. Soko, we have accountants and all that will think properly on how things are supposed to be done. Then the government says, let's employ more health workers. We had the situations where one nurse probably will attend to, in a day, will attend to maybe 5,000 people in a day. What kind of attention will that give you? That kind of a nurse. And they said, now let's reduce this ratio that we can have maybe one nurse to attend maybe to 1,000 people. I'm just giving an example here. I don't have the figures. By employing more people in the in the health sector. On top of that, some of the competitors, the Patriotic Front, were saying, these children that you are employing, you are recruiting as in free education. This government says, let's have more desks procured to allow our children to learn. On top of that, let's recruit teachers. But there's a progressive thing.
No, we still ask because the pupil teacher ratio, much as government did recruit 30,000 teachers, it does not address the pupil-teacher ratio. It is the pupil-teacher ratio is still as high as unacceptable according to regional benchmarks. As assigned to. Just like the health sector, Mr.
Rightly put.
We understand that measure the government undertook of recruiting 11,000 health workers did add to contributing towards that problem. But that problem is still as high as it is because the doctor-patient ratio is still high. If you go to Chawama, if you go to Mandevu.
But would you agree with me?
Where we are agreeing
11,000 is mean achievement.
Where we are agreeing is that it makes a difference.
It's mean achievement. Tell me, Mr. Soko.
Where we are agreeing here is that it makes a difference in terms of
a big difference
because. But overall, we still have a long way to go as a country, and we have to continuously engage. Because if we are going to be complacent, we may forget and stop recruiting more people in these key sectors, and that is vital. And our preview to the new recruitment for health workers that the government.
It's only that you are on the other side of the desk. If I were an interviewer, I was going to ask you to say, when was the last time that we saw such kind of numbers being recruited in government? I think the Zambian people know that in these thousands that we've had, I think only 15 years, 20 years, so we have got a starting point that we can be proud of ourselves. Number last PF, I said Pastor number 3. Whether it mean achievement.
Let me just bring this to your attention. We have our viewer who is watching us on Facebook, Mr. Wale, who says, interesting to compare what the UPND National Youth Chairperson said on the same matters as Bwana Walia. He is throwing around slogans and repeating the same thing, more defensive than the UPND. It is a matter of crying more than, And then the other question that has been put to you is, what is NAREP doing to help the UPND government overcome the challenges it is facing? What value is NAREP adding to the UPND?
Let's
you being part of the alliance.
Those 2 questions.
That's a very good question. As National Association Party, we are alliance partners to our colleagues, the UPND. We have an opportunity to talk to the UPND leadership. And we are in the same room, I would say. We're in the same. We went to the battle together, and we are sitting together with our colleagues. There are things that they need to do, to work on. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying everything is correct, perfect, and 100%. We are saying the UPND have put us in the right direction. That's why I'm saying they get 10 out of 10. But now they are 7 or 6.5 out of 10. My issues to the High Court. But as we are moving forward. But we're talking about development. Development is not something that you just said 2 years. I'm back 10 years. But we were 2 years. 5-year mandate. And it's healthy that we have got people in the opposition that are able to critique what's happening. But ourselves, we've got access to our leaders. We are able to tell them, that's how government is run. And we are living in a democratic dispensation where we expect that there will be those divergent views which are healthy for democracy. And we've seen that under this regime, we know that democracy has been enhanced and the freedom of speech.
Enhanced by preventing opposition from gathering.
I did explain that. But before I finish, let me explain.
Because those are key indicators. Because people would say, I think this government is tolerant. Look, they have allowed them to do things they want to do.
When I was coming here, there is some radio station I will not mention here.
Yes.
That had to put the background the doors kubika padapado if machine because panonga na batwingirira panonde andainenga ali mu opposition kuma fyolupi.
But we hosted you while in opposition on this platform.
You did host me, and I was putting my head on the chopping board because I knew what was happening. Well, they were backing into people said, sorry to say this, why no one else mukano journalists bamusundira mukano kuri ba PF. We saw that and you know it. I'm not speaking something from out of the world. Journalists at the TV station, kumusenda bamusundira mukano. Really, sorry to say that. But you saw that happen under the PF regime. But Shimbaka Mwidi Mukabwe. We are Urupi, no kumadonsera panse.
But we have seen UPND
cadres.
We have seen UPND cadres starting
those are things, my sister, those are things the Zambian people detested.
To just summarize, Mr. Mulenga.
So now, when you move from a direction that this place we're in, and we're now moving, you're not just expecting things to be perfect, but we're moving in the right direction.
Yes. We have seen, you know, cadarism slowly mushrooming within the UPND.
And Mr. Riswaniso was testifying, and our someone now gave a comment where he said even the UPND itself leadership was complaining that the price of minimum is too high. But it's like you are defending more, and that's the question that will concern that was.
Let me combine
the UPND was admitting that things are not as good as they should.
Let me combine the two. The acknowledgement that Swaniso gave about
cadres
that misbehaved, misbehaved, no one would accept that it's good for cadres to misbehave. No, that's the difference that you're able to see. Where even leadership is able to acknowledge there is a problem. When others were in power, when ministers were saying we'll break your bones, no, not even one minister was shunned. What we saw was people being killed by the High Court. But police ganawesa na matanka muli wa PF ule tapata pa High Court. You saw that as Zambians. So now we are saying we've moved from that direction. We are now getting to better our situation. And the president has been on point. You will not be supported if you are found wanting. There will be no sacred cows. And he said once you are arrested for having misbehaved, you are on your own. The commitment that is coming from the highest office is enough to deter the would-be offenders. And the police have been given the authority to say, if you find someone breaking the law, arrest. What we saw previously was the police being slapped at the Central Police. Police officer. Let's acknowledge that we are moving towards having to better our situation.
As we come to the conclusion of our program this morning, what are some of the concluding remarks? And you being part of the alliance of the UPND, what are some of the things that you would want to see different?
In concluding, what I would expect is the Zambian people to be patient enough and be optimistic that we've got a leadership that hears their cry, who hear their cry, and they are responsive and they will attend to their problems. We know that things are not at their best, but this government is listening and they are moving to making sure that their plight is responded to when it comes to the issues of the cost of living, having to better the economy, having to have them get employment, and we've seen they've made strides in that direction. So I can only say there is light at the end of the tunnel. In this 5-year mandate that the UPND has been given, let's judge them after this 5-year mandate to say what has been your success after 5 years. Then, as we go through the elections come 2026, we'll be here, God willing, to ask again the Zambian people to say, with what we've achieved, do we deserve another mandate that we can continue in office? And those that have alternative ideas, probably mina wakwatako bene kalavana bene nani nga wakwatako my idea to suma bakawapeleko chance. But for now, we know that the UPND are in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is where we have to call it a day. In studio, we had the National Restoration Party Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Martin Mulenga, explaining to us pertaining to how the UPND has performed in the 2 years time in office. And myself, Patrick Soko, and Miriam Kaimba, this is where we have to call it a day. But do remember to join us tomorrow on the Camnet Breakfast Show as we come with another interesting episode of the Breakfast Show. Remember to keep it on Camnet TV, because Camnet TV is not just another channel.